great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for taking out the time
Thank
to
you
be
very
with
much
us.
for having me.
How are you sizing up the trends when it comes to ESS spending?
I think what you're watching is companies are having to invest in software that is going to provide competitive advantage and growth to those businesses. If you start with the premise and the understanding that we live in a world of global competition where you either are growing or you are dying as an entity, there is no status quo left in the marketplace. And because of that, Rimini Street has come in and we are disrupting this very profitable enterprise software maintenance business, which is $160 billion US a year as an industry.
Seth, you chaps are something of a leading indicator of global enterprise spending. So just give us your take on how it's holding up. How is the order pipeline looking for the rest of the year and into 2020? And just how cautious are customers right now or otherwise?
Well, I think we are in a very turbulent global economy right now, and we're watching this play out with a lot of countries managing their own spending. They're looking at imports, obviously. We're talking about tariffs every day. We're talking about global trade. This creates a very complex business environment. So that means that the spending that we're going to do is going to be on systems that are going to drive competition. They are going to drive competitive advantage. When you think about that, that means that there are certain systems like the back-end financial systems, the core transactions, which don't generally provide competitive advantage, but they're very costly and they take a lot of the spending. And that's where, again, Rimini Street is focused on cutting that cost dramatically, saving our customers so far over $4 billion, we estimate.
I want to take out the politics of the 5G rollout and just ask you, how much of a game changer is that going to be for you guys? Is that a challenge or an opportunity?
I think, again, it's an opportunity for companies, but you have to have the funds to invest. And if you look at the business problem that Rimini Street's focused on, we're looking at the fact that Gartner says that most companies are spending up to 90% of their IT budget on day-to-day operating costs. That number is too high. That leaves only 10% of the IT budget to invest in new technologies like 5G. What we are doing as a company is we are reducing those operating costs. Our goal is to get them down to about 60%, freeing up a tremendous amount of additional money that can be invested in technologies like 5G, AI, and machine learning, things, again, that will drive competitive advantage globally.
Which are your priority markets? I'm given to understand that you're expanding in LATAM with the new Mexico subsidiary. So is it focused emerging markets versus developed markets? Because there's so much competition back home.
Well, I think that when you look at it, we just announced expansion in Asia, right, with our new office here in Singapore. We announced new operations in Mexico. We just announced Poland and Russia expansion as well. I think you're watching a global movement now to really globalize all business. We serve companies in over 100 different countries today.
Seth, what is the, sorry, Tommy, I just wanted to bring up this legal dispute that we're hearing about with Oracle. What's behind that, and how do you think that is going to be resolved?
Well, we've been in court in the United States with Oracle since 2010, so this is almost a decade-long battle. But when you come in and you're disrupting an entire industry like an Uber and Airbnb disrupting their industries, had almost a monopolistic business where you had the Oracles and SAPs of the world driving a 90% plus profit margin on billions of dollars of maintenance money. And they really had very little competition. Rimini Street came in and changed that with 2,800 companies signing over the last decade, including 150 of the Fortune 500 already converting to independent maintenance.
Sorry, I just want to circle back on that point where you're focusing on emerging markets. So if you were to give us a 5-year vision, how much contribution to your top line and bottom line will come in from EMs versus some of the markets that you've been focused on, as well as the mother market in the US?
Well, I think the emerging markets are big. I think China is still a little immature for our particular business because they haven't had enough track record of maturity in terms of business operations over the last decade. And I think that if you look at Mexico, if you look at Latin America, if you look at Asia Pacific, they're very fast growing. And in fact, they're growing faster than North America in our total operations. So contribution to top line and bottom line is going to be very significant.
Significant as in more than 20% in 5 years?
Well, I think we're already over 30% just from our outside of North America. So we're continuing to see that trend grow.
Seth, increasingly, the likes of Apple and Samsung, they are moving into software, they're moving into services, and the apps and enterprise software, etc. They're trying to become less commoditized. Again, what are the implications?
I think you're watching that every company is a software company. If you start with that premise and you think about that, you think about Uber and you think about Airbnb, they are a software application. If you look at Amazon, what's the competitive advantage? It's their logistics, it's their capability, it's their software that makes them much more capable to deliver globally than other competitors. So I do think that you're watching everybody using software as a key differentiator in the competitive advantage globally.
And I'm sorry to push you, but what kind of margins do you expect because of the scale up and this expansion and diversification that you're planning on? What kind of target do you have in terms of gross margins?
Well, our gross margins are going to be north of 60%. We already are, which puts us on par with other SaaS-based software players in the industry that are leading in terms of market position. So I think you'll watch. We believe we can get to mid-60s and maybe even beyond in terms of gross margin.